What's up, guys? Brady here, coming at you with a review of the new Loathe album, A Stranger to You, released this past Friday, July 17th. With this album, we're talking about one of the most highly anticipated modern metal releases in recent memory, easily. It, of course, follows up this band's second album, I Let It In and Took Everything, which was released way back in 2020. Which is an album that really made waves in the modern metal scene with just its wildly eclectic sound and just the fact that this band had done such a good job of actually creating and carving out their own unique sound, which is something that is becoming more and more uncommon in the metal scene, I feel like. Between the really bassy, staticky production, the very atmospheric and textured vocals, and overall soundscapes of their music, their intensity and their heaviness, and just their wide array of influences from so many different corners of rock and metal, that record really did establish itself as something completely fresh. It was one of my favorite records from 2020, and I've been very curious to hear what this record was going to sound like, and I think the burning question on a lot of people's minds is this record just as good, or is it even better, perhaps? And in this review, I'm going to answer that question, at least according to my opinion. Now, the first step in doing that is establishing the clear similarities and differences, and comparing and contrasting these two records. What are maybe some things that the band pushed more on this record, and what are some of the new ideas that presented on this one that were not on the previous one, and what are some things that have maybe stayed a little bit more consistent? Right away, something that has definitely stayed consistent to me is the band's production. I love the way that they make their records sound, between, again, the really staticky guitar and bass, the bass being so up in the mix as well, and especially the drums. The drums have a very synthetic quality to them, but they punch so hard through the mix, especially the bass drums. Same goes for the band's use of studio effects and cinematics in various ways throughout their tracks, whether it's kind of on top of the music itself, or it's being used as transition points or interludes. A bunch of these tracks still have like more of those ambient outros or intros, which is definitely a quality that their last record had as well. And there's a few tracks on this record that do feel like logical descendants to specific tracks on that last record, which I will get into. So it was great to see that the band has not lost a step in just the way their record sounds and just the unique sound of it. But I'm more interested in talking about the various ways that Loathe has progressed their sound a bit further on this album. The most noticeable evolution for me being that the band has definitely pushed their atmosphere and especially shoegaze influence on a bulk of this record, which kind of makes sense. I mean, on the last record, it was those more dreamy, atmospheric type of tracks that really blew the band up. And it's great to see that the band kind of took notes from that and gave the fans what they wanted to hear, which was a bit more of that, at least to me. The first instance of this being the third track on here, Fortress Down, very shoegazy type of track with its mid-tempo pace and its very rich atmosphere. It's got like that bubbly, dreamy intro to it, and I like how this track really sets the pace. Coming in at track 3 and following up Block of Flats, which is one of the more dynamic cuts on here, this record kind of brings everything down to a bit of more of a consistent point, which I think fits well, like I said, being rather early on in the track list. A huge highlight for me comes in later on the record with the track The Way It Breaks, which has some gorgeous melodies right off of the bat with kind of like this swaying intro part, very layered and textured. It ends up really being the driving force of the song. But just more and more layers keep getting added to it. It really ends up evolving the entire time, and it's one of the most memorable tracks on here as a result for me. It's just so lush and velvety and dreamy. It has a very addicting atmosphere, which is something that I was hoping to hear more of on this album. And just for good measure, it throws in the ambient outro at the end. The Ladder, that's another one, just an absolutely gorgeous track that's dominated a lot by some acoustic guitar melodies, which is something a bit different for the band compared to their last album. This is a very tender song that still has its catchy moments. I find the vocal cadences in the chorus in particular to be really catchy. And I really like how once you get towards the end of the track, the band kind of ends up evolving the track further with some key changes and melody evolution. Very, very beautiful song. And perhaps my favorite song on the record is the track No Stranger to You, especially coming in as the last track on here. I thought it was clever that the band put this one here because this one really is a direct descendant of Is It Really You? That was on the last record. That's a song that has become very special to me in recent years. It was funny listening to this album the first time. I was on my way back from a road trip, actually, and I remember going through each song and thinking, where's that just transcended and dramatic, climactic, is it really you type of song? Because I was really hoping they would have another one of those tracks on here, and then they put it last, which really kept you on the hook, I think at least it did for me, and I was beyond satisfied listening to this track. It's so larger than life, and it retains all of my favorite aspects of Is It Really You in its pacing, its atmosphere, and even its lyrics. It has the shoegaze influence, it has some amazing vocal harmonies, and the end of the track too, it really reaches this dramatic, epic finale, and then has more of a somber outro to it that ends really abruptly, and I feel like it makes you want to immediately re-listen back on the album. So with that bunch of several tracks, I was ecstatic to hear the band amplify more of that dreamy, shoegazy influence like I was hoping they would. There's plenty of other bright moments on this album. There's a few tracks on here that focus a bit more on being hooky. There are more middle ground tracks between the heaviness and the melody. Fangs being a great instance of that. This was the third single from the record. Very infectious, hooky track with its mid-tempo pacing and its infectious bass lines. The chorus in particular having some really catchy vocal cadences. And then you got those more somber verses with that laid-back urban vibe. Got that alt-rock influenced twangy bass line, and another cool ambient outro, which is, I feel like, becoming something this band can call a signature trope of theirs. I'll give very similar compliments to Meet My Maker, the track before it. It's got kind of like an eerie ambient intro before it kicks into probably the most nu metal influenced song on the record. I've never been a fan of the nu metal label on Loathe. I just feel like it's kind of lazy, especially all these comparisons I see to Deftones, which, yeah, there's definitely some overlap there. If you're a Deftones fan, you're probably going to like this band and this album too. But Loathe is just, their sound is so much more than just nu metal or Deftones worship. But that being said, the melodies on this song just reek of the early 2000s, which bring in a very, very nostalgic vibe, which I especially love. The vocal melodies on this track probably do that the most, with just the really angsty melodies in them. And at the same time, this song also has some of the catchiest and bounciest rhythms on the entire record. And then when you get to the end of the track, it gets more frantic and it gets more discordant, and it adds that extra touch of some nuance. Harder to Pretend is another song that in its dynamics, it's more in the middle between being heavy and being melodic and atmospheric. The shoegaze influence definitely takes more precedence in this track, but it still has that heavier metallic backbone throughout. Again, super bouncy, catchy rhythm section and vocal cadences, and the ambient outro on this track is one of my favorites on the album. Brings in some strings and some synths, and it switches things up, and it kind of is one of the more unique parts on the record. I love the lead single, Gifted Every Strength, that was released over a year ago now. It was one of my favorite songs from last year. Right away with this track, it builds that tension so much with that swelling synth line, and then it kicks into those really just stomping, hard-hitting, groovy rhythms that are presented throughout the song in several different ways, very creatively. Song might have the best up and down dynamics on the entire record between just the heavy and melodic parts, because the heavy parts are really heavy, the screams are absolutely vicious, but the melodic parts on here are just absolutely beautiful. They're so pleasant to listen to, and the transitions between all these different parts is so seamless. There's very sweet, tender, almost jazzy type melodies in those more stripped back melodic parts. I especially love how it evolves near the end of the track, and you get more of that whimsical version of it. And then I also love how the band added on an extra acoustic outro to the song for the album. Also in this track, I'll single out the very percussive tempo shift in the bridge that almost brings in somewhat of a dance beat influence. I thought that was very creative, but it still has the heaviness behind it. A very similar part comes in on the track Gemini in the bridge section. Just again, very like bouncy, almost dance beat type rhythms in there, but it still retains that same aggression and meanness and heaviness that the song has already conveyed up to that point. I especially love on that one how it just kicks right in to the really heavy, aggressive, and groovy riffs coming in also in track 4 after Fortress Down. It just kind of is a jolting shift, but it hits really hard coming after that more melodic track. Second single, Revenant, is probably the heaviest and proggiest song on the record that really appeals to my inner music nerd, at least. But again, it still maintains the groove of it, and it still has its catchy moments, especially in that initial main groove. It makes great use of some dissonance and some odd time signatures. At this point, you will notice that I'm pretty much praising everything about this record. But it's not a perfect album, and I'll tell you why. It's the interlude tracks. I'm not a fan of the style of interlude tracks they went on here. Especially the two main interludes on here, which feature Bucky Sugar, who I wasn't familiar with. It brings in kind of like this spoken word, half-rapped poetry style of vocal. And it came off a little bit try-hard to me. Like the band was kind of trying to push the drama of the record when I don't think they needed to. I think the songs speak for themselves on here. There's also Nothing Like the Knife, which I do like. I don't think this track needed to be its own song. I don't know why they couldn't have just put this track as like the intro to Harder to Pretend, which comes immediately after it. I think Loathe is a band that could easily pull off interludes, and I think they did pretty well, actually, even on their last record, but I just wasn't a fan of the route they went on with especially those main two interludes like I singled out. Overall, this is another phenomenal release from this boundary-pushing modern metal band that I might even say is slightly better than I Let It In and Took Everything. If you're a fan of that record, you're absolutely going to love this record, and I'm so glad that it does seem to be getting the hype that it deserves. This album really is worth the hype. If it wasn't for those two interlude tracks, I would probably call it a masterpiece, but I unfortunately can't because I didn't like those two tracks. I'm just going to take off like a point for each one and give this album a score of 28 out of 30. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to hit subscribe for more rock and metal-related content. Please comment below your thoughts on this album if you've heard it. I love to hear them and discuss this album further. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.